The remnants of a once great mansion, christened the Hermitage by its builder, still stand in Hamilton, Ontario. Destroyed by fire in the 1930s, the ruins are a mere shell of the splendor that once was. But among the remains, two paranormal entities from the manor's opulent past have been reported. A park employee approached the ruins and was shocked to see a body hanging from a tree. He was stunned, fearing someone had committed suicide. The figure swayed in the wind and then vanished. The terrified employee ran. Later, he learned there had been a suicide at that very spot, but he was over a century too late to have stopped it.
Originally built in 1865, the Hermitage ruins still stand in Hamilton, Ontario, a mere shadow of the Grand Estate's historic heyday. What's left of this once great home has been preserved for future generations, including the past residents who remain trapped in the mansion they once called home.
Today I'm standing in front of the Hermitage ruins in Ancaster. Once a beautiful mansion built by the Leith family in the mid-1800s is now a set of stone ruins after a large fire in the 1930s claimed it. One of the legends at the Hermitage involves a coachman by the name of William Black. Now, William was a servant of Otto Ives. He was in love with his niece, so they went to Otto Ives and they told him about what was going on. He flipped out. He couldn't have his niece being involved with a lowly servant. William Black couldn't take the pain of not having his love, so he went out back with a length of rope and hung himself. The legend goes that William Black still travels between the spot of where he's buried to the Hermitage, carrying his length of rope and looking for his lost love. People have reported seeing William Black here at night, the tall, dark figure of a man. They've seen him disappear, but also we've gotten reports of people who saw him, got scared, and turned around and quickly went the other way. Well, I've always felt that there's a lot of energy at the Hermitage. Not all good energy, there's a lot of negative energy here. I had an unusual experience after one of our ghost walks. I had to go around the one side of the Hermitage to call the people who were kind of milling around back to come back out because the security guard's going to lock the gate. So I went around the right side of the Hermitage and I saw two people, looked like they were dressed in black, but it was very dark. Right after I called out to them, as if they didn't really hear me, they started turning and going towards the forest. I was a little bit confused at that point, so I called out again. I said, "We have to go, they're going to lock us in." And they walked right out into the forest, so I ran over there. I shone the flashlight out and there was nobody there. I can't say I was threatened by the two ghosts I saw, but definitely when I come back here at night, it's the first thing that pops up into my mind.
This second ghost is described as an elderly woman, and many believe her to be the spirit of Alma Dick Lowder, the last owner of the Hermitage Mansion.
Alma Dick Lowder bought the mansion off of her family and fell in love with it. This is where she wanted to stay. After it burned down in the 1930s, she was so adamant about staying on this land, she actually set up a tent in front of the ruins and lived in that tent with her crippled dog until her death in the 1940s.
Alma loved her home so much that she may have stayed on long after her death. This spirit possesses a unique ability. It seems to be able to control what others see. An engineer traveled to the Hermitage, eager to study the building's foundation. He did not find the ruins he expected. Instead, there was a ghostly image of a stone mansion in full splendor, drifting in and out of focus like a mirage. As he approached, the building returned to its ruined state. The man heard a sound behind him and turned to find an elderly woman staring at him curiously. Perhaps she wanted to offer a brief glimpse of the building as she remembered and loved it. And then she vanished. The terrified engineer had no desire for any further exploration. The skeletal remains of the once proud Hermitage Mansion still stand, now home only to these two spirits. One, a man who loved a woman so deeply he could not bear to live without her. The other, a woman whose devotion to the manor was so strong that death could not take it away from her. Thousands visit the ruins each year, but a fortunate few may, if the spirit is willing, catch a glimpse of the splendor which once was. In Montreal, Quebec, the building at 1234 de la Montagne Street has had a long and intriguing history. During the 1900s, it was a successful mortuary. In the 1970s, it was reborn as Club Esprit, the city's most popular nightclub. Ironically, the English translation of the word esprit is spirit. The manager of Club Esprit arrived early one day and was surprised to see a woman standing at the top of the stairs. She was alluringly beautiful. She smiled at him and slipped away. Curious, he followed her through the club, all the while wondering how she had gotten into the locked building. Many employees had reported strange events in the club, but the manager had yet to experience anything unusual himself. Cautiously, he approached the mysterious woman, not wanting to startle her. He was stunned by the horrifying vision and resigned as manager that day, making this his first and last paranormal experience at 1234 de la Montagne.
The building at 1234 de la Montagne in Montreal, now home to the World Beat Complex, has a particularly menacing haunting. These are not passive ghosts, but aggressive apparitions whose physical appearance embodies our darkest fears.
The 1234 de la Montagne used to be the funeral home that was very well known around the whole Quebec province. But when it closed down, rumors circulated about necrophilia, which was never proven.
Perhaps the spirits of those people whose bodies were defiled here have not been able to rest in peace. It's possible that the perverse events of the past have left a negative, supernatural energy in the present, which manifests itself in these nightmarish apparitions of the dead. During 1234 de la Montagne's period as Club Esprit, a hostess came face to face with the ghosts of the building's dark period as a mortuary. A mutilated apparition approached her and then vanished. Suddenly, it reappeared over the landing, just a few feet away from her. The spirit she described looked as if it had undergone an autopsy, with crudely stitched scars crisscrossing her bandaged chest. It was a horrifying sight.
From what people have been reporting, we're not talking, about good, nice, happy spirits. Some of them might, but mostly we're talking about ugly, disturbed apparitions. So it doesn't sound like it's a good situation here. We have one story that comes at some point where one of the girls went downstairs to the bathroom and got hit in the face by unseen ants.
The ladies' room was the scene of many frightening encounters at Club Esprit. There were reports of entities that seemed to shift from vaporous matter to solid flesh at will. These were not calm spirits, but angry and violent apparitions. One young patron was attacked by the strange, mutilated woman. The figure seemed to disappear and reappear, but never relaxed her vice-like grip. Suddenly, the scarred figure released the young girl and vanished for good. What is now the ladies' room was once the mortuary's embalming area. Perhaps long ago, this was the site of some depraved desecration of human corpses. Not all the experiences at 1234 have been with malevolent spirits. Staff of the current Worldbeat Complex Art Center, now housed here, have reported more positive encounters with the spirit world.
Well, I had a personal experience with a ghost. It was a really strange encounter. I heard a sound and I was going to hear what it was, and then there was a big blue light, very, very bright, and it was like a ball, and it was shooting towards me, and it came in and entered through my arms, and then it filled my entire body. So after that, I couldn't believe it, but I didn't realize it was a ghost until after it escaped and it left my body. But it was a really crazy and overwhelming experience that I've never ever felt before. Okay, I think that there were more ghosts before. We actually had to hire a professional witch who came in, and she performed some cleansing ceremonies. But I still think that even after she got rid of a lot of them, that there were still some ghosts that stayed. I think that there will always be ghosts that feel home here, and that they're going to always be here.
I believe that the ghost activity has subsided here because it was abandoned for 8 years. It was abandoned for 8 years because a lot of the businesses that opened here had suffered already with, you know, problems with their business because of the haunting activity here, which was not good. Possibly it subsided also because there was no human activity here to disturb the spirits themselves. As this building will progress, I mean, if people could start coming in, if it's more active, I believe that yes, it could come back. It could possibly restart the activities as it used to be.
The new owners have had nothing but benign encounters with the resident ghosts and hope the darkness that has long surrounded this building has finally moved on. But perhaps the evil entities are simply lying in wait, plotting their new reign of terror on the living at 1234 de la Montagne. In Drummond Hill Cemetery, many claim to have witnessed soldiers from the past returning to this one-time battlefield. A waitress on her way home from work cut through the cemetery. Although this was her normal route, on this particular night, for some reason, she felt uneasy. With every step, this feeling grew. It was as though she was being watched. She stopped for a moment and looked behind her, and though she saw nothing, she was unable to shake this sense of fear. It wasn't until she was beyond the gates of the graveyard that she felt safe. Now, from outside, she peered in. To her astonishment, she saw 3 soldiers, and then, in an instant, they were gone. Confused and frightened, she left the cemetery, vowing never to cut through there again.
In 1812, the Battle of Lundy Lane took place on Niagara Falls, Drummond Hill. Many lives were lost, and the area was immediately transformed into a cemetery. Now, over a century later, the spirits of 3 young Canadian soldiers still roam this hallowed ground, seeking an end to the horrific battle that claimed their lives.
In the War of 1812, Niagara Falls was a strategic military location. For the Canadian and British forces, it was a passage point through which they could expand the territory under their control. For the Americans, it was a direct route to infiltrate the opposing forces garrisoned in the area. As a result, many skirmishes and heavy battles occurred.
We're here at the Drummond Hill Cemetery, where on July the 25th, 1814, was the scene of the bloodiest battle in the War of 1812 between the British, Canadian, and natives on one side, and the approaching American forces on the other. It was hot, it was humid. There were bodies all over the place because of the humidity, because of the stillness in the air. The gunpowder just made the air around here like soup. Friend and foe were accidentally killing each other because they couldn't see the enemy. The Americans retreated, and the Canadians won the Battle of Drummond Hill. Approximately 1,700 soldiers, the average age of 15, lay on the field, dead or dying.
One day, a local man took his normal shortcut through the cemetery to get home. He had heard countless stories about the legend of Drummond Hill, but never believed them. In the distance, he saw a strange male figure, then another, and yet another. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the 3 soldiers vanished. The young man dismissed the experience, deciding that his eyes must have been playing tricks on him, and he continued on his way. However, as he walked further down the pathway, an unsettling feeling came over him that he couldn't shake. When he glanced back, he saw the same 3 ghostly soldiers advancing toward him. At first startled, then frightened, he ran off in an attempt to escape the gun-wielding trio. He stopped for a moment to glance back at his pursuers. The 3 spirits were still right behind him. He sprinted away as fast as he could and never looked back again. The individual identities of these 3 soldiers remain a mystery. It is believed that they died at the Drummond Hill battle, protecting the British line. Perhaps they were 3 friends, fighting and dying side by side.
Over the years, the Drummond Hill Cemetery has become somewhat of a tourist destination for Americans and Canadians alike. But recently, a new kind of tourist has shown up here, the ghost hunter, the paranormal seeker, the researcher. There have been specters of lights photographed. There have been soldiers as if standing guard over certain tombstones. Truly, this has got to be one of Canada's most haunted graveyards.
This unlikely tourist destination attracts thousands of history and war enthusiasts every year. One such visitor came to admire the graveyard's historic headstones. However, on this night, he would encounter more of the past than he had bargained for. The spirit of one of the 3 soldiers made it clear that this cemetery was still under their guard. While the shaken tourist was physically unharmed, he was shocked and confused by what he had just experienced. This history buff decided he had seen enough of Drummond Hill and its phantom century. The soldiers who paid the ultimate price and gave their lives for the good of their country believe so strongly in their commitment that it seems even today, 2 centuries after the bloody battle, at least 3 of these brave men continue to uphold their duties. And according to many visitors, startled by the ghostly trio who protect the cemetery, they should still be commended for a job well done. The Marr residence in Saskatoon is a museum and meeting center, but after hours, it takes on a life of its own as home to an array of spirits. A staff member had stayed late, finishing notes after a board meeting. She heard footsteps echoing through the empty house. The sounds seemed to be coming closer and closer. She was shocked when a man stepped into the doorway. He was pulling on a pair of white gloves. His body was transparent, and he began to almost vibrate, as if being electrocuted. She knew this was not an actual human being, but some sort of apparition. Then the strange man walked away. Frightened but curious, she followed. Entering the downstairs parlor, she found herself surrounded by floating orbs of light. These luminescent balls seemed to dance around the room, accompanied by the sound of children's laughter. The mysterious lights fascinated her, and for a moment she forgot her fears. Until she turned and saw the man from upstairs outside the window. His expressionless stare sent a shiver up her spine. And as her terror intensified, she ran away in fear.
Saskatoon's Marr residence is one of the most unique and historically important houses in Saskatchewan. It is also haunted. Ironically, this very small home houses 3 distinct and separate ghostly entities.
The Marr is the oldest house in Saskatoon that's still on its original site. It was built in 1884, and the city acquired it in 1979, and it became a designated heritage property and is now open to the public for programming. There was a group of school children that came through the building one summer, and one of their chaperones was a woman who was psychic, and she was very intrigued by the possibility of ghosts, and actually came back later and walked through the house with us and described the various presences, including the fellow in the upstairs bedroom. She said he was a fairly reclusive sort, spent a lot of time in his room reading. He worked at a business that required him to do record keeping, and he was very proud of his penmanship, and he was very vain about his hands, and he always wore gloves on his hands whenever he went outside.
The antique desk that was once in the upstairs bedroom is now displayed in the parlor. This may explain why the ghost has begun to appear downstairs. For a quiet, educated man, this writing table was most likely where he felt at home. Following a function, another staff member heard sounds coming from the parlor. She saw a young man sitting at the desk. When he saw her watching him, he immediately stopped what he was doing, picked up his white gloves, and walked off into the corner of the room, out of her sight. She went over to investigate, but found the room was empty. But the most startling part of the encounter was the desk itself. The woman watched in amazement as all the items began to disappear one by one. And then the writing table closed up on its own. The room had returned to normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something there with her.
When you look through the Henderson directories for the years 1909, 1910, there's a fellow named Charles Gathercole who lives at this address. And Charles Gathercole works as a clerk in a business on Broadway, 2 blocks east. So we think that perhaps the ghost of Miss Charles Gathercole, and we refer to him as Charles. The ghost downstairs is a very unsavory sort of character, and both the woman who worked in the office upstairs and I felt uncomfortable in the basement. She said she could only be down there for about 10 minutes at a time before she felt somebody watching her. And he's big and burly and dirty and bearded, and he's got yellow teeth and yellow fingernails, and he smells. He's just a very unsavory character. And he also has expectations of women and that they should know their place.
Many of the staff have had unnerving encounters with the spirit in the basement. A woman went downstairs to locate some stored files. Immediately, she felt uncomfortable, as if something was not only watching her, but inexplicably, she felt quite threatened too. Something began to pull at her purse. Some invisible, malevolent force was trying to take it from her. She held on tightly to the bag, and for a moment her unseen attacker relented. Then an imperceptible energy pushed her against the wall, almost knocking her to the floor. Terrified, she ran upstairs and has never returned. No one knows who this malicious spirit could be, or why he seems to have such a disdain for women. The third paranormal being at the Marr residence is in sharp contrast to the dark, evil entity in the basement. Passers-by often report mysterious flickering lights in the windows. This phenomenon is known as sprites or pixie lights. Employees have witnessed these lights on several occasions. They report seeing small glowing orbs that float through the rooms in an almost playful fashion. Some staff members were convinced that if you stared directly into the orbs, you could catch quick glimpses of children and hear the sounds of their laughter. These mysterious lights, also known as dead man's candles, are most often seen in cemeteries. Native Indian legend suggests they were there to guide the recently deceased through limbo and onto the other side. Perhaps before the Saskatoon area was settled by Europeans, indigenous people used this spot as a burial ground. The ghosts of the historic Marr residence are truly a unique combination. Trapped in this small space are childlike balls of light, a quiet, solitary man, and an embittered brute that dwells in the basement. Why such a diverse group of spirits have chosen to share this home remains a mystery. Perhaps the floating orbs are really mystic guides trying to lead the other two souls beyond the confines of Earth and into the freedom of the afterlife.
Calgary's Hose and Hound pub is now a popular night spot, but the building was originally a fire station built almost a century ago. It has also been the scene of many unexplained events. Paranormal expert Gretchen Michaels made arrangements to spend the night in the building to investigate these reports firsthand. Suddenly, an antique fire axe fell from the wall, missing her by mere inches. Frightened, Gretchen began to regret being in the building alone. Perhaps she was not. She entered the darkened kitchen, using her camera's night vision feature to see. Something small was moving around on the shelves. Perhaps an animal. Then, some unseen force pelted her with objects from the kitchen shelves, unleashing a barrage of baskets and utensils. Fearing for her safety, she fled the building. The next day, Gretchen visited Chuck Rose, owner of the pub, to show him a remarkable piece of videotape. What the tape had captured for a brief second was not a ghost per se, or what people perceive a ghost to be. The tape showed something very different. It appeared to be a monkey?
Anyone who has ever loved a pet will claim that they have as much personality as human beings. But can an animal become so attached to a place that it stays on in spirit after it dies? In Calgary, Alberta's Hose and Hound pub, there are people who will tell you it is more than just possible.
The ghostly presence at the Hose and Hound pub does not set out to terrify people, but almost torment them with an endless series of malicious pranks, often at the expense of the staff. Trays of food are a favorite target. And staff report hearing a strange sound after one of these incidents, as if someone or something was laughing at them.
Well, the most common ghost legend we have is about Barney the monkey. The very first fire chief of Calgary was a guy named Cappy Smart, and he had a thing about animals. He had several monkeys here through the years. Barney the monkey was a mascot for the firemen here at Fire Hall number 3. One day they were out fighting a fire, and they left Barney tied up to the flagpole out front. Some people came along, a family, and one of the children tried to offer the monkey a treat. The monkey attacked him and scratched him up quite badly. And as a result, the firemen decided they had to put the monkey down. His remains were buried out in front of the fire hall. And ever since then, there's been some strange goings-on here. The dishwasher, when it's open, it's off. You close it, and it's on. Well, it was sitting there open, and we were standing right in front of it. And all of a sudden, it came on with the lid open. The next day, I talked to the people who supplied it for us, and they said, it can't do that. They said they checked it out, they sent a repairman. The repairman said, no, everything's working perfectly, and what you're describing can't happen. Well, it did happen.
The pranks played by the spirit known as Barney are not always so harmless. A waitress was cleaning the upper level prior to opening. She heard the sounds of something moving on the opposite side of the room. Suddenly, the balls on a pool table broke with a deafening crack. Yet there was no one else in the pub. Then pool balls began to fly across the room, thrown with tremendous force directly at her. Fearing for her safety, she raced from the room. Many think that this was one of Barney's more violent outbursts. The Hose and Hound is one of Calgary's most popular pubs, where even the staff come to relax and enjoy a quiet drink. But some think Barney may have an appetite for alcohol. snacks have mysteriously disappeared from tables, right under the nose of patrons. Later, they have discovered their now empty glass, far from its original location. Some suspect that Barney may have had a hand in these beverage hijackings. Working animals often show a level of devotion equal to any human being. Perhaps Barney's dedication to the firehouse was so great in life that it has carried over beyond death. Whether he is feeling playful, malicious, or just thirsty, this former mascot continues his supernatural monkey shines at Calgary's Hose and Hound pub. Hotel Fort Garry has been Winnipeg's grand hotel of distinction since 1913. Unique to this hotel, however, are two long-dead guests who have yet to leave. After a long day on the road, Robert Wagner, a hotel guest, climbed into bed, anticipating a good night's sleep. Adjusting his position in bed, he turned and felt someone lying in the bed next to him. Panic gripped him as he opened his eyes, only to see a woman in bed with him. As he looked in the direction of the woman, she gently blew him a kiss and vanished.
The Hotel Fort Garry in Winnipeg, Manitoba is a luxurious hotel built for prestigious travelers. It took an enormous effort by many people and a staggering amount of materials to complete construction on time. It is during construction that our mystery begins.
In 1911, 2 years before the opening of the hotel, some final installation procedures were being made to the elevator. Rutherford, the hotel's maintenance man, was called to work on the problem. But while he was in the elevator, it malfunctioned, losing its counterbalance and careening to the ground, killing Mr. Rutherford instantly. It is suspected that the unfortunate Rutherford is just one of the many spirits which haunt Hotel Fort Garry. Betty Cooper, a kitchen staff member, was laying out utensils and prepping the dining room for its next guests, when suddenly she felt a presence in the room, as though she were not alone. From the corner of her eye, Betty saw something move. Upon investigation, she found nothing out of the ordinary, but was still unable to relieve herself of the feeling of being watched. Another tale tells us of a love story gone horribly wrong. Mary and her young lover John had eloped. Secretly, they thought. They hid themselves away at Hotel Fort Garry for a honeymoon. It was in room 202 their marriage and their fate would be sealed. Disapproving of both the marriage and John, Mary's father discovered their whereabouts and stormed into the room, dragging the hapless husband away from his daughter. His anger spiraling out of control, Mary's father beat her husband to death. Distraught with the knowledge of John's fate, despairing at the thought of the rest of her life without him, Mary took her own life. And it seems Mary never left the hotel again, becoming yet another of its permanent spirit residents.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I've been working here at the Hotel Fort Garry for 3 years. One day, I went to go clean room 202. As I was doing so, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one thing out of my cart start flying. As I looked over, more items levitated off my cart. I was so scared that I ran out of the room.
My name is Diane. I was staying at the Hotel Fort Garry here in Winnipeg, and one night I was staying in one of the rooms and I was sleeping. I was woke by a feeling like I was being nudged in the bed. And I actually fell out of bed. And when I got up, I came face to face with what I really feel was a ghost. And I do think that the Hotel Fort Garry is haunted.
Winnipeg's Hotel Fort Garry, where some stay the night and others stay an eternity. Walter Peck, a staff member at Edmonton's Mackay School Museum, was working late, preparing a room for an important meeting the next morning. Satisfied with his work, Peck locked up the meeting room and began to leave. As he walked down the hall, he heard the sounds of children echoing through the empty building. The sounds grew louder and closer until it seemed to surround him. Frightened, Peck ran from the building. Outside, Peck felt a bit embarrassed, knowing there had to be a rational explanation for what he had just experienced. Peck glanced back at the building. Standing at the window of the meeting room was a man, staring down at him. Convinced it was a burglar, he raced back into the building. He found the only door into the meeting room was still locked. Yet somehow, his carefully set up room had been reduced to a shambles. He turned and found himself face to face with the figure he had seen in the window. The man stared at him coldly, then silently turned and left. Peck ran into the hallway, but the figure had disappeared, and he was alone once again. Now, genuinely unnerved, he locked up and quickly left the building. This would not be Walter Peck's last encounter with the mysterious gentleman.
Edmonton, Alberta's Mackay Avenue School Museum chronicles the long history of both the city and the building. But this is a museum where the past literally comes to life. The staff and visitors report an astonishing array of unexplained activity. None doubt that they share these halls with the spirits of long ago.
The Mackay Avenue School building has been many different things. It was once the site of Alberta's first legislature, and now houses a museum and provincial archives. But its time as a school may have left the greatest imprint on the building, as voices from that era still echo through its empty classrooms.
The Mackay School goes back to the early 1900s, and I believe that the history that is in this building has led to many of its current hauntings. The kids that went to the school and some of the workers who worked on its original construction, and some of them who died, obviously are remaining behind at the school, probably just to make sure that their school stays intact.
Longtime staff member Lisa Traeger, working late one night, had a mysterious encounter with one of the building's former students. She saw a child wearing an old-fashioned school uniform staring at her. The boy ran off. Traeger was convinced the boy had somehow wandered into the building, so she followed him. The boy glared at her, angry at the intrusion. Her efforts to catch the boy proved futile, as if he could predict her every move. Giving up, she returned to her work, only to find the mysterious boy standing at her desk. Her search turned into an eerie game of hide and seek, but the boy almost seemed to disappear and reappear at will. Finally, the boy vanished before her very eyes. Shaken, she returned to her desk, only to discover her computer and paperwork strewn around the room. It looked as if a tornado had struck, or an angry child. Other members of the staff have investigated the phenomena and discovered clues to at least one spirit's identity.
I've been here since October 1984, and the building I work in is haunted because a lot of people have had different and unexplained experiences, including myself. There's been many nights with the Ouija board, and the very first time with the Ouija board, I made contact with a fella, and he identified himself as Peter. He was supposedly a laborer who fell off the roof during the 1912 edition. Peter identified himself as dying on January 3rd, 1912, and I was born on January 3rd, 1951. And our schoolhouse opened on January 3rd. I feel maybe that's why there's a connection between Peter and myself. A lot of other fellow workers have experienced some sort of thing happening here that was strange.
The strange events generally occur at night, when employees are alone. The building's boiler inexplicably failed one evening, and as the lone staff member, Walter Peck felt duty-bound to investigate. His search led him to a second encounter with Peter. Peck has since moved on to a new position and declined to be interviewed about his experiences. After hours in the Mackay School is when another employee experienced unexplainable events. First, she heard the sounds of children. The door suddenly slammed shut. No matter how hard she tried, the door would not move. But the moment she released it, the door opened by itself. As she made her way out of the building, The sounds of children surrounded her. At the window stood the ever-present spirit known as Peter, the eternal night watchman of the Mackay School. Some theorize that Peter is a guardian, protecting the young spirits that inhabit the building. We may never know why these entities have chosen to stay on after death, but one thing is clear. As long as this historic building stands, its hallways will never be truly empty. As we're about to discover, this quaint little inn, tucked away in Ontario's cottage country, attracts more than just weary travelers. A businessman came to this inn for a weekend getaway from the city. He was exhausted and needed a break from his usual drudgery. But the break he got turned out to be far from what he had imagined. Our unsuspecting guest is about to experience more than just cottage hospitality. The visitor felt as if he was being followed. In fact, he was, by the spirit of Judge William C. Mahaffey, the inn's original owner and, it seems, still ghostly occupant. When the traveler reached his room, he could not shake the unsettling feeling that came over him. Then, as he opened the door to his room, he discovered why. He came face to face with the judge. And then, as the ghostly apparition approached him, it simply vanished. The astonished traveler looked for the judge, but finding nothing, dismissed it as fatigue. But for this guest, it wasn't over. As yet another spirit, this time that of a woman many believed to be Mrs. Jackie Niven, a former owner, who after suffering from cancer, passed away in the home. The man awoke from his sleep, startled to find this ghostly woman in white staring at him. This time, there was no denying it. In one night, our tired vacationer had two distinct ghostly encounters.
The Inn at the Falls is right in the midst of cottage country in Bracebridge, Ontario. Throughout its existence, the inn has seen many changes. Changes resulting from death, fires, economic turmoil, renovation, and restoration. Surviving all of this, the building remains steadfast and dignified and haunted.
I started here at the inn in 1983, and I was here to the year 2000. You're at Inn of the Falls, and it's in lovely Bracebridge, Ontario. This place had a mind of its own, and that it would only keep who it wanted, and that if it didn't feel that you were welcome here, that you would not stay. And the people that I started with there was a lot of activity at that time when they were here. They, like ashtrays would fly off the counters, clothes would fall off hangers, fly across the room. Some people say, including myself, that Inn at the Falls in Bracebridge is a haunted house. And it truly is.
Another former owner, pregnant, climbed carefully down the stairs when she lost her grip. She and her unborn child tumbled to their deaths. Late one evening, a guest at the inn was awakened from a deep sleep by footsteps. As she listened closely, she could hear a woman crying. When the sound stopped, she returned to bed. Still disturbed by what she heard and unable to sleep, the guest went down to the front desk to tell them what she had heard. She asked the staff person if someone was having difficulty on her floor. Astonished with the guest question, the clerk responded by telling her that she was alone on the floor. Puzzling over the guest's story, the employee then had her own encounter with this inn's previous owner. Inn at the Falls in Bracebridge, Ontario is a great place to stay. Where else can you expect cozy rooms, excellent service, and a variety of ghostly encounters? Hatley Castle at Royal Roads University was once the magnificent residence of the incredibly wealthy James Dunsmuir, who seems to live on there long after his death. Laura Johnston, a visitor to the castle, found this out firsthand. Entering the castle, Laura had the distinct feeling that she was not alone. With an eerie feeling of being watched, she glanced up behind her, where she saw a dark, shadowy figure on the landing, who seemed to be staring directly at her. Slowly, she made her way to the top of the stairs, but saw no one there at first. Suddenly, an older gentleman startled and frightened Laura as he approached her. Laura Johnston certainly was not the first to see James Dunsmuir long after he had died, and she wouldn't be the last, as his spirit seems bound to the hallways and rooms of this, his former mansion for all eternity.
Victoria's Hatley Castle in British Columbia was built for James Dunsmuir, a former Premier and Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. The castle was home for the family until the 1930s. Today, it is home to a family of spirits.
Some of the other ghostly sightings around the castle seem to have something to do with the time when this building was used as a military college.
Hi, we're here at Hatley Park, and behind me is Hatley Castle, located in Victoria, British Columbia, in the community of Colwood in Souk. The estate was built by James and Laura Dunsmuir in 1908, between 1908 and 1910, and the house was originally intended to be a retirement home for James, who had just stepped down as Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. The government turned it over to the Department of National Defense, and they ran a military college here from 1940 until 1995, and then in 1995 they opened up Royal Roads University, which is what's here now. With the family's sordid past, it's no wonder that people consider Hatley Castle to be haunted, and there actually have been several sightings of ghosts inside the house.
Cramming for exams can be a pastime for some students, and so it was for Barry Short, first-year cadet who was up late one evening, getting in as much work as he could for an upcoming exam. Staying up too late, he fell asleep at his work. A tapping on his shoulder awoke him. Looking around, he saw no one, and, thinking he must have been dreaming, drifted back to sleep. Again, Cadet Short was awakened, this time by a push. He looked up and saw a woman staring directly at him. As he watched her for what seemed like just a moment, she walked away and simply vanished. The young cadet tried to get a grip on himself. Was he dreaming? Or was he just visited by a ghost? Perhaps the ghost of Laura Dunsmuir.
They took the description that he gave and went to visit Dola, who was living on the property at the time, and they described the woman to her, and she said that it was the spitting image of Laura, her mother. Now, as with any historic building, there's always ghost stories attached to it, and some of the more famous ones involve James Jr., who was one of only 2 sons James and Laura had.
James Jr. decided to join the military to serve his queen and country. On the day of his departure, James prepared himself, adjusting his uniform so that he looked perfect. He joined his sister Dola and his parents in the Japanese garden for one last goodbye. As they embraced, James Jr. received some final advice from his father. He knew how much his family loved him and wished him home safe and soon. It was a sad, yet proud moment for the Dunsmuir family as they watched their beloved James head off to serve his country, like his father and grandfather. This proud moment would turn into tragedy, haunting the Dunsmuirs throughout the remainder of their lives and beyond. A German U-boat had sunk James' ship, the SS Lusitania. All aboard perished, including James Jr. Receiving that fateful telegram from the Army, James' mother Laura was grief-stricken. She joined her family in the garden to inform them of the horrible, most unwanted news. The family was shaken to its very core, and they did their level best to console one another. The Dunsmuirs never really recovered after the death of their son.
Now, Dola, who was the youngest daughter of James and Laura, was particularly upset by the death of her brother, and the only way she found to calm her nerves was by taking long walks in the Japanese garden.
It was in the beautiful Japanese garden, where Dola had last seen her brother, that she had the first recorded experience with the spirits of Hatley Castle. From across the pond, Dola saw a man standing in a military uniform. Looking closer, she saw it was her brother James. Dola quickly ran to him. She missed her brother terribly and wanted to tell him how much she loved him. When she arrived at the spot where she saw the uniformed man, of course, no one was there. If her eyes were not playing tricks on her, then perhaps her grief had become unbearable, causing hallucinations. Disappointed and saddened, she returned to the gazebo. And then, from behind her, Dola heard her name being called out. She looked back and saw her brother, and somehow she knew her brother understood exactly how she felt. It was as though James had come to say his final goodbye to his sister, and then vanished. Visitors to Victoria's Hatley Castle in British Columbia, now Royal Roads University, may still encounter the Dunsmuir family, who seem bound for all eternity to this incredible castle. The beautiful and elegant Dean House restaurant is a popular dining spot in Calgary, Alberta. But this lovely building was also the scene of a tragedy, one which has given it the reputation as Alberta's most haunted building. One night, a staff member was alone in the building, yet she clearly heard footsteps coming from the attic. The footsteps ended, replaced by the soft notes of a piano. Nervously, she made her way up the stairs to investigate. She entered the upstairs parlor, but the room was empty. Relieved, she made her way to the piano and casually hit one of the keys. The moment she did, the room began to come alive. A rocking chair began to slowly move on its own. She reached out to steady the chair, but the rocking stopped before she could touch it. Then she saw a crimson stain on the floor. She reached down to touch the puddle when it vanished. A low, whispering sound began to emanate from a mirror in the corner. Cautiously, she made her way towards it. Behind her was a woman with wild, angry eyes. She turned to protect herself, but the room was empty. Then, some invisible force began to move the rocking chair again, and she fled, knowing she had encountered the spirits of the Dean House.
Calgary, Alberta's Dean House restaurant is located in Fort Calgary, where the city's history is celebrated. But the Dean House itself has a very different past, one which may be better left forgotten. When night falls, its dark past sometimes comes to life.
The Dean House was built by the last serving superintendent of the Calgary Barracks, Captain Richard Burton Dean, and he moved into the house in 1906 and lived in the house until 1914. The house is currently operated by the Fort Calgary Preservation Society as a restaurant. There are stories about hearing footsteps. The first week I worked at Fort Calgary, one of the windows on the third floor mysteriously blew out.
Philip Dawson, former manager of the restaurant, had many paranormal encounters. He was closing up after a private function when he heard footsteps coming from the stairs. A gaunt-faced man began to descend, and as he approached, the temperature of the room dropped. The man completely ignored Philip, passing him and walking out onto the enclosed patio. Stunned for a moment, Philip followed the man. But there was no sign of him on the enclosed patio. Yet there was no other exit. It was as if the gaunt-faced man had vanished. This would not be the last time the spirits of the Dean House paid Philip a call. On another occasion, he distinctly heard a phone ringing in the building's parlor. The only phone in that room is an antique, yet it was ringing, in spite of not being connected to the wall. Then the gaunt-faced man appeared again, standing in the doorway, staring at Philip, who was frozen in fear. The figure walked away, and the phone began to ring again, a call Philip chose not to accept.
There was a murder, double murder-suicide in the house. So there are many people that feel that the ghosts in the house perhaps were those two people.
During the lean years of the Great Depression, the building became a boarding house. A young couple and their child lived in what is now the attic. Times were hard, and the struggle to get by created tension, magnified by the husband's psychological problems and abusive nature. The husband's behavior became more and more erratic until finally, one night, his inner demons took control. Holding a butcher's knife, he made his way into their bedroom. He slashed his wife repeatedly and left her mutilated body on the bed. Consumed with guilt, he used the same knife to slash his own wrists. In the morning, it was their child who came upon the gruesome aftermath. She survived the experience physically, but psychologically, it destroyed her. The brutal acts committed here may have left a permanent imprint on the house. The spirits of the family may be trapped within its walls forever, each in their own personal hell. There are reports of a ghost child, an innocent and tragic figure seen hiding in and around the attic. Perhaps this is the daughter, trapped here with her parents. Philip Dawson had another strange experience. He heard noises coming from the attic and went upstairs to investigate. Upon entering the attic, he saw a child dressed in clothing from a bygone era. She saw him and did not take kindly to his presence. She raced at him, only to disappear mere inches away. To this day, Philip refuses to enter the attic of the Dean house. The ghosts of the Dean house represent a tortured family portrait. The spirit of the woman in the mirror, condemned to relive her brutal death. Her child, even though she lived on for many years after the murder, the happy little girl she once was, died that fateful morning and has returned to the building. And finally, the killer himself, trapped for eternity at the scene of his own crime, just one of the lost souls inhabiting the Dean house.